Getting about those, thanks again for tuning into yet another video. Here we have the FXRT Fairing. We are doing prep work, and instead of showing you guys all the boring stuff of sanding down and grits and all this other stuff, I do have videos coming out on that stuff pretty soon. I have a bunch of footage that I haven't edited from painting, so I'll just show you guys a rough overview of what's, what we're doing, what's getting done, and how to have the best finish for your paint if you're doing this yourself and not shipping it to the painter. So I have a mess over there. You guys can see it's raining. It's non-stop rain here in California. It hasn't rained like this in about 6 years, and it's just annoying because it can't get anything done. I don't have a garage. So let's look at what you get from Dominator. Of course, this is Dominator Fairing. This is a gel coat with the fiberglass. Now, I'm not going to talk about the quality and all this other stuff in this video, but I'm just going to show you. This is how it comes from Dominator. You have some imperfections. You see it right here. I believe this is where they seam, the molding or whatever you call it. There's not a lot of imperfections on these parts. Everything's pretty smooth, everything's pretty good from just working on it for the last couple of hours. But yeah, this is the way it comes. Like I said, gel coat, resin, fiberglass, carbon fiber. Now you can't paint on this, all right? Well, I mean, you can, but it's not gonna adhere to the surface. You're gonna have flaking, it's gonna chip off. I don't know if you guys seen some of those nightmare videos where the paint just kind of comes off like it's a vinyl wrap. It's really bad, so we have to prep it. So I left this undone just to give you guys an idea of how it's supposed to look. Now, this is the fairing. This is body filler, of course, depending on the size of a hole, or if you have something that's maybe about the size of a dime or something like that, then you should probably consider fiberglass Bondo or angel hair Bondo. I believe that's what they call it. So it's just it just has little fibers in it, and it's a little bit more difficult to work with. I mean, the reason why I just went with regular Bondo is just it takes a little bit longer to sand down, but it's the same process. This is the way it's supposed to look once you start covering up all the holes, all the little imperfections. What you're supposed to do before this is sand it down to at least with a 120/80 grit. And that gives it a good surface for the Bondo to adhere. So we're supposed to use, I used the 120 because I didn't have the 80 grit, but you could also use, of course, the 120 80 grit, or even a 160, but I wanted to make sure that it had good grip, so that's why I like using 80 grit. Just be careful when you're doing 60/80 grit, around the edges. The material is really thin, so you just look at what you're looking at right here. You can see the gel coat, then you can see, I'm not sure what this is. I mean, that might be part of the carbon fiber. I don't think there's carbon fiber in this area, but you can definitely see the layers of the gel coat, the primer. I don't know if that's primer or resin. So just be aware that if you're using 60 grit, 80 grit, you are removing a lot of material. Not a lot, but quite a bit of material, and you just have to be careful you don't completely burn through and then give yourself even more work. So getting back on topic, this is, I believe, the first coat of Bondo. Now, you could of course do this primer. That's just going to take you a lot longer. Primer is basically you're building up layers for the low spots, and then of course you're sanding it down, you're blocking it down with the 320, and you're basically filling up the low spots while you're sanding down the high spots, and eventually you'll meet up in the middle. And you could do that with primer filler, but that is going to take you a lot of quotes. So the reason why we use the Bondo is to kind of speed that up a little bit. So there's plenty of ways to do this, right? So this is the first coat of Bondo. Depending on how it looks after you sand this down, you might have to do it again. So sometimes you have little air pockets in the first one. It happens, you sand it down. You could also use putty after you prime it, or I mean, it just depends on what you're doing. Sometimes, usually it's just one. Sand it down and then see if there's, you know, if there's huge holes or gashes in the body filler, then you'll do it again. But for the most part, you would do it once or twice, and then after that you use the primer filler, and the primer filler is what kind of fills it up. So back on the fairing, after, you know, looking at it, looking for imperfections, usually it's just on where the mold meets. So we have a lot of let me show you on this one. We have a lot of this step up, step down right here. You know, I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick it up, but you know, you can hear my finger catch on to where it's kind of uneven. And after looking at it, usually the imperfections are just up here, like I said, where the molding meets, and then along this edge. So here, let me flip the fairing around so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So you can see that I have two shades of Bondo. The first one, of course, I didn't mix, you know, enough, so I went ahead and I went over again and I mixed up another batch. So it's really fresh right now, and like I said, it's been raining. It's been raining nonstop here. It's winter, depending on you know, a lot of weather conditions. You might have to mix a really dark hardener like this one, like this dark blue. There's more hardener on this one, and then there's this lighter green. You know, that's not the same amount of hardener, but yeah, this took a little bit longer to dry than this one. So depending on how you mix this, you might be able to sand it within the you know, within about 30 minutes, depending on how much hardener you use. So, and anyways, getting back, of course, you can see that there was just a minor imperfections right here. Like I said, it was mainly just the edge, all over the edge on the fairing. Let me go ahead and flip this way. You guys can see what I'm doing. All of this is going to get sanded down. I'm going to start with a 120 and then work down to a 320 after, you know, I'm happy with the way it looks. So this is what it's supposed to look like. You could try making this as smooth as possible, but because of the spreader, the Bondo spreader, or whatever, the squeegee, it's at a, you know, rough angle. I try not getting a lot of it on this side, because I mean, for the most part, this side, you know, it's pretty good. But eventually it's going to get all over the place. All right, you are going to have to sand the whole fairing down anyway, so it doesn't really matter. All of this, like I said, is sanded down with the 120 for the Bondo to you know, adhere to the surface. So as far as this top spot, you don't really have to worry about it. But you know, I mean, it's going to be behind the windshield anyways. But I decided, you know, if I'm doing all of this, I might as well do this. So like I said, all of this has to be sanded down with the 120, 180, and then of course we sand it down again with the 320, a scuff pad, to prep it for the paint. Another thing I would say is use your hand for this. Don't use a block sand or a sanding block. Do not use a sanding block for a surface that's got a contour on it. All right, you have to do it by hand. If you must, use like a foam pad or something flexible. That way you could you know, give it that shape of what you're sanding. Because if you're using a sanding block, you're going to get flat spots and it's going to stand out on black paint. So we do have a flat spot on what is supposed to look once you're all finished. And once again, this is Dominator fairing. You know, it's going to depend on how it looks overall, but towards, you know, this area, there's not a lot of imperfections. A lot of this has to get sanded down, of course. We do have like a weird bubble right here. I don't know what that is on the fairing. I mean, everything's pretty good looking as far as, you know, where it matters. But this, I'm not too worried about it. Of course, if you have something like this on a high spot, you are going to have to, you know, sand this down, and you'll have to build this up. So if I was worried about this little spot, I don't think the camera picks up on it, but you can see where it steps up right here. The way I would fix something like this, if it was on the side of, you know, the fairing somewhere out here, I would of course sand this down with the 120, this whole area, put the Bondo right here, and then it's going to look like this. Of course, it's going to look like crap. You would put Bondo from here to here, kind of like this, and then we would start sanding that down, and eventually you'll even out this high spot with this low spot, and it's going to look like one solid piece. So that's the process of taking care of a high spot. So let's go ahead and move on over to what it is supposed to look like, which is this. So this is a here, let me hold it next to the other lower so you guys can get a better idea of what it's supposed to look like. Let's move the FXRT Fairing. So this is what it's supposed to look like. The one on the right is the one that's all prepped. You can see the shade is different. You can see that the one on the right still has a high gloss finish. This hasn't been prepped at all, so there's no prep on this one. On this one, you can see it's a matte finish. So this has been scuffed down with the 320 scuff pad, which is it's a 320 grit. You could scuff this down with with the 180 as well. It doesn't really matter because we still have to primer this. There's still a little bit of imperfections in this, but it's very minor. The primer is going to take care of most of it. So you can see that I took care of this whole edge right here. This used to look like this on this one. You can see my thumb kind of catch on the on the evenness. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm painting this black, so I have to make sure everything's smooth out and even, because it is gonna show on the final product. So all of this has been sanded down. Like I said, there's multiple different ways to do this. You can hit this with the primer, and then eventually you'll start seeing the primer feather out right here on the low spot. You could use primer filler. You could also use Bondo right here, and then you'll have a little bit of this feathering effect all along of course this edge. So like I said, there's multiple ways of doing it, and everything's been pretty much sanded down. I also even did the inside, just scuffed it down with the 320, the red scuff pad, and that is just to give it a good adhesive with the primer and the actual component, because you need good adhesive for the paint. If you don't, if you skip all this prep, your paint's gonna last maybe a couple weeks. So we also have, you can see right here, a couple sanding, because there's a few chips. This is the way to kind of take care of that. You're supposed to sand it down to the lowest point. So there were some gashes up here. We took care of that, and of course we're gonna hit this with the primer. It's gonna fill in perfectly. We also have a little imperfection right here, minor stuff. The primer is going to take care of that after a couple coats of primer filler. So which lead us to this spot right here, and you're wondering, why is this like that? And this one's pretty good. So when Dominator sent me this, I picked up on this surface right here. This used to be a flat spot. Now you don't have to, of course, take care of it, kind of like what I did, but like I said, I'm painting this black, and black will show everything. All right, this is going to stand out, and it was standing out already on a white surface. I'll show you a video on what it used to look like, but this is basically this used to look like this. All right, and this was sanded down with the 180 grit. You can see that I was going down into the actual fiberglass here and here, which is, it's just an indicator of when it's when it's pretty good, when it's pretty even. Now I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but like I said, this was really noticeable. All of this was flat, so it would curve and then it would flat out right here, and then it'll do that, and it was just standing out. So that's why I went ahead and I used fiberglass. So once I start sanding down this Bondo, it's gonna look like this. All right, it's got to be feathered out. That way it blends in smoothly, and it's not, it doesn't stand out when you start spraying your base coat and everything else. So the reason why you see some high gloss here is because, like I said, it's been raining. There's water on it. This still has to get cleaned. This isn't ready. You can see it. My fingers are turning white because there's still that sanding, it hasn't been cleaned. This still has to get degreased with the solution, of course. So this one's pretty much ready for primer. Like I said, most of the primer is just gonna fill in these imperfections, and then there's a few air pockets. You can see one. I'm not sure if the camera's gonna pick it up. I doubt the camera's gonna pick that up, but you have you have a little, you know, a little minor imperfection here, and I believe there's another one here. I don't think the camera's going to pick up on it, but the filler, the primer filler, is going to take care of that. That's why we do that. So yeah, sorry if the video's kind of boring. A lot of this stuff, I mean, it's a lot of prep. It's mainly just sanding, spray sand, and this is just why it's, you know, some of this stuff takes a while. And like I said, I'm going to touch up a little bit right here. I mean, you can still feel it right down here, but I mean, I think I got to the point where it's pretty much well even. You know, there's still a little bit of imperfections, but once we hit all of this with the filler primer, that's, you know, that's going to be taken care of. So we're seeing, of course, right here, you see how it feathers out between, you know, the gel coat and the fiberglass, or the carbon fiber. You can see that that it feathers out, and that's what you want when it comes to, you know, like dings and scratches along this area. So it's just, yeah, it's just prep. It's a lot of elbow grease. If you have power tools, you could do that, but you know, when you're dealing with fiberglass and you're dealing with you know, contour surfaces, you have to be cautious, especially with the fiberglass, because you're moving material. When you're doing it on metal, you know, it's a good indicator of when, you know, you're supposed to take it easy or stop. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to keep on working on these. You guys, you know, stay out there, stay safe. Don't believe everything you read. Life's a risk. Get out there and ride. Later.